I'm Rob.
I'm Nate.
I'm Melinda.
And this is Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. And here tonight with us we have our inaugural guest, my wife Melinda.
Hello.
We are recording this just right after the Oscars. We wanted to do an Oscars episode where we talked about the Best Picture nominees and our favorites of the year. The Oscars just ended, so we have all of the winners in hand. We know what everyone, what things won. But real quick, we're going to start off by going through all of the Best Picture nominees, and then we'll talk about the winners in different categories. So, starting off right off the top of the ballot, Ford versus Ferrari. Melinda, what was your thoughts on Ford versus Ferrari?
I really liked it. That was a film that me and Rob saw on a double date, and it was really a film for car people, and I am a huge Shelby fan. I think a Shelby Mustang could be in my future, Rob, just FYI. But I really enjoyed it, and I think there was a lot of depth to that movie that we don't see in terms of racing movies very often.
I felt like it was a lesser version of Ron Howard's Rush. I thought that was a superior version of it. I enjoyed the movie, as I'm offering these critiques. I enjoyed the film. I thought it was a good film, just didn't necessarily see why it was nominated for Best Picture. But now, the main detractor of this film, we'll turn the time over to Nate.
I did not care for Ford v Ferrari. I'm not a car guy. I'm not a racing guy. It's not really my kind of thing. Had this movie not been nominated for Best Picture, I would not have seen it theatrically, and quite likely never would have seen it in any form. I thought it took 70 minutes to get going, and so that first half of the film just bored me near to tears, and I thought the second half was fine, but nothing special about it. I would have to thumbs down this movie.
Yeah. I kind of want you to see Ron Howard's Rush at some point and see if you appreciate that anymore. I think that was a superior racing film, better cinematography. I think it was an all-around better film.
It would be nice if the racing film had a pace more like a race, because this film
Rush
was
kind of does.
No hurry to get where it was going.
Yeah, Rush has a better pace in that regard. So.
See, and I disagree with both of you, but that's okay. I'm gonna move on.
You're welcome to interject.
Well, no, it's just I think that Le Mans is its own beast, and I think that this sets up NASCAR racing for the United States, and we don't give enough credence to that when we look at older makes and models of cars like this. I think this also fits, one thing I have never mentioned was this fits into the genre of this year, which seems to be 60s and 70s films, and this fits into that category, the time frame that we're loving so much this year in terms of films. So.
Next on our ballots is The Irishman. Nate, you want to lead us off on that?
I liked The Irishman. It is way too long. It should have had an intermission. Well, it's not too long. It just should have had an intermission.
Yeah.
It is long, and I understand people that's a problem. But I really enjoyed it. It's kind of a summation of Scorsese's career, of all the gangster films. It's kind of the epilogue to that. I don't think we'll ever see another gangster film from Scorsese or from much of the cast, as this is very weighted to seniors. Most of the people in this cast, the main stars, De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, they're septuagenarian, and Harvey Keitel's 80 years old. But it just kind of, it's a good summation. It's a good capstone to what Scorsese's done and what's really his defining genre.
Yeah. What did you think, Melinda?
I agree. It was too long. I had a hard time sitting through it. I enjoyed it for the sheer fact that, mobster movies aren't always my thing, but I enjoyed it because I felt more like it humanized the De Niro character more, which I think was great. I think we mentioned earlier that it was a boys' club movie, so this wasn't really set for me. They weren't gearing it towards me, but I love that this is the last gangster movie we are going to see from one of the best directors in Hollywood, and I think it had some of the best cast that we'll see for something like that. And I loved Al Pacino as Hoffa. I loved him as I think he was great. I really, really liked him.
Yeah. I liked this film. I thought it was good. I agree that it was too long. I think, though, I respect some of the choices they made, though. In the middle of the movie, there's some scenes where, Joe Pesci's character's meeting one-on-one with Hoffa and then De Niro's character. But that scene, to take the time to let that scene play out the way it does, that's not something you see a lot in films anymore. And I think it added to this film, but overall the film was too long. But yeah, it was a good film.
I also liked that we saw Ray Romano in a movie. I feel like it's been a long time. and he did okay. Like, he stood his ground. He wasn't in it very long, but he did a dramatic role, and I liked it, and it worked for me. So
yeah. Next is Jojo Rabbit. I really, really, really loved this film. There's a lot of great things to say about this film. Taika Waititi did a great job. He both in directing this and in his performance as Jojo's imaginary friend Hitler. This film, this was a strong film. I would have loved if this had won more awards. But yeah, this was one of those films you walk out of the theater and you're just in a good mood. I loved this film.
I agree. This was the last film I saw in theaters. That was one of the Best Picture nods. And so for me, I watched it by myself, and I think I laughed more than half of the other people in the room because I got all the little nuances. I think what I really loved was Taika as Adolf. I thought he was hilarious, but he showed this vulnerability as well in terms of being an imaginary friend to a 10-year-old, and I thought it worked and it fit and it was delightful. Scarlett Johansson as the mom made me almost want to be a mom in terms of being relatable and in terms of understanding a 10-year-old and not giving him any excuses, which was nice too.
I can understand why some people may have problems with this film. The tone changes a fair amount through it, but it's supposed to reflect the arc of Jojo going from a very rosy view of what's going on around him to realizing the true horrors of it, because it starts out very much as a broad comedy, and by the end it's touched some really serious territory. It always has a little twinkle in its eye. It's not so much a period piece as it is a sad commentary on present society and reminding us that we've been down this dark road before and we shouldn't go there again.
Yeah. And I have to comment, I loved Sam Rockwell's performance in this. I've said it on the podcast before, I'm a huge Sam Rockwell fan. I enjoyed his performance on this, and I thought he was great as well. So, any other comments on Jojo Rabbit?
I also think, I think it showcased really how easily we fall into the trap of just being a fan of someone, like just being a fan of whoever happens to be around right then. And I think that it does a really good job of showing that kids are susceptible to that as well as grown-ups. And so it was nice to see that in a film, I don't know, but also kind of have its own take on World War II as opposed to just being a war movie.
So the next movie up is Joker. We've done an entire podcast on it and talked about it briefly in our year in review top films of the year episode. This was not on my list. It was on Rob's. I thought this was a really solid film, and I think it probably is one of the best films of the year. Though I couldn't put it in my top 10 list, largely because I just kept thinking of what it was deriving from. It was very derivative, intentionally so, of Scorsese films. Sometimes homages work for me in films, sometimes they don't. It worked less so in this film than in some others. Again, quite solid, it just wasn't entirely my thing.
I agree. The movie itself was too dark for me. I think the thing that really worked was Joaquin Phoenix. I think he did a delightful job. Well, not delightful, because it's too dark for delightful, but he did what he was supposed to do. And for me, there were some questions about where the Joker comes from in that universe of the Batman and how that all fits together. And I think this film, as a standalone film, does what it's supposed to do. I think it can't be part of any sort of series because it leaves too many holes. But as its own standalone moment, I think it's beautiful in that simplicity of where they find themselves. And he's just such a good actor. Like, he just really is just such a good actor and really put everything together the way it should be and made it all fit. So.
Yeah. He may not be the best post award speech
giver. We'll get to that.
Spoilers.
But I liked this movie quite a bit. You know, like Nate mentioned, we've already done an entire podcast about this, so you don't need to hear me talk much more about it. But it certainly deserves to be nominated for Best Picture. But yeah, I enjoyed this film. But yeah, it's a dark film, so.
Not so dark is our next film, which is Little Women, which I thought was joyous. I mean, I left the theater extremely happy. I knew almost nothing about this film other than the barest of outlines. I knew there was four March sisters. I knew New England. Their father was off serving in the Civil War, trials and tribulations of growing up. That's basically what I know. I know that Greta Gerwig took some liberties with the script. The narrative jumps back and forth between the girls during the Civil War, during their father's absence, and then a storyline roughly 1870, 1871 when they're a little more grown. It took me a little while, honestly, to fully catch on to when it was switching back and forth, but eventually you do, and it's such a, I was just so happy at the end of this film. It was joyous. It's my second favorite film of the year. Highly, highly, highly enjoyed Little Women.
Yeah, I think everyone should go see this film. I actually had a conversation with my dad, my sister, and her boyfriend in a car on the way to a basketball game last night. And my sister had made some comment about not having seen it yet because she didn't want to drag her boyfriend to it. And he had made a comment that he was willing to see it. And I said, regardless of whether he wants to see this film or not, this is a film you should go see. I loved this film. This was absolutely hands down my pick for Best Picture. The movie I was rooting for to win Best Picture. It's a 4-star movie. It's a tremendous movie. But yeah, the person who knows the most about the source material now. Let's hear what Melinda has to say.
So I read the book growing up. I've read all of Louisa May Alcott's books, actually. I'm a huge Louisa May Alcott fan. I saw the 90s version of this film with Winona Ryder, and I always felt that there was something missing from the story in terms of the relationship between Joe and Beth and Laurie in that weird love triangle. And Greta Gerwig did such a good job of filling that hole and making it work. And for me, this film quintessentially encapsulates that story in such a modern yet fun way that really shines in a way that no other film could do this year. And so I wanted it to win Best Picture. I do. I think that would have been great. I knew that wasn't going to happen. I would have loved for that to happen, but I also recognize that it is in and of itself just a good story and something that I would watch over and over again. I saw it 3 times in the theater. I saw it with women. I really wanted Rob to go see it, and we never really got a chance to go see it together until we were getting ready for the Oscars. And the first time I saw it, I knew he would love it. I really did. And what even bigger than that is I cried every time I saw it. And that's not always the case, right? I know the story. I've known the story since I was 10. But it still brings out that emotion of really doing it. The other part that I loved was Laura Dern as Marmee, as the mother, and just showing them that a strong female can be in charge and a leader, and I think that really is showcased well for that whole, it's incredible. Go see it.
It's a very excellent film. This is the source material is a 19th century novel written for 19th century little girls. I cried 4 times.
Aww.
Yeah, this really worked for me, and I did not expect that it would work as well as it did, but I thoroughly enjoyed Little Women.
Yes.
Greta Gerwig, you should do Little Men now, too. Men need a movie. That is all.
Okay, not the comment I expected from the only woman to be on our podcast thus far.
So the next film on the list we all watched for the first time this morning. That's Marriage Story, written and directed by Noah Baumbach, the longtime partner of Greta Gerwig, who did Little Women. This is a story of the collapse of a marriage between a Broadway director and an actress, originally a Hollywood actress who had relocated, and their custody battle over their son and about where they're going to live. And I really liked this movie. There's a depth to it. These characters are very multi-layered. There's not really a good guy or bad guy per se in it. I mean, everybody has their flaws and their virtues. There was a really good appearance by Alan Alda in it as a nice guy divorce lawyer. But the entire cast was really good. It was a large, diverse cast. Of course, it was helmed by Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver as the couple. But you had Julie Haggerty in it. You had Merritt Wever, Alan Alda, as I mentioned. Ray Liotta is in it for a little while, and Laura Dern. again in this film playing a divorce lawyer. I really liked it.
Yeah, this film is a easily relatable film. I wish, I mean, this gets kind of back to the commentary on like some of these Netflix films not, getting very limited theatrical releases. I would have loved to have seen this in the theater. I wish it had been a little bit more accessible. I liked the film. It wasn't I mean, I can see why it was nominated for Best Picture. Those performances by Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson are great, but not really one of my favorite films of the year.
I agree with Nate. There wasn't really a good guy or a bad guy. I went through this whole period where I didn't like Adam Driver, and then I didn't like Scarlett Johansson, and I didn't like either one of them in the way they were treating their kid. But at the same time, I think more than anything, it showcases the modernity of divorce, kind of where we're at. Everyone's got a career now. Everyone's got to try and figure out their own crap and how it all fits together. And I think this film highlights all of that everyone comes with baggage and you have to find a way to figure it all out together. And I think that that's really at the heart of what it was trying to say, was that you have to work through it and figure it out for the best of everybody involved. And I think that's really what it gets to in the end. It was kind of hard for me to get there though. And it's taken me a couple hours just sitting here watching the Oscars to get to that point where I was okay with it. It's not a movie I would watch very often, but I did love Adam Driver in it, and I loved Scarlett Johansson in it. And again, Laura Dern did a great job. Alan Alda is delightful in anything that he's in at this point in his life. But yeah, it wasn't my favorite movie this year, but I do like what it was trying to say. So.
Yeah, I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I saw those performances. I don't know that I have a strong desire to see it again. Yeah, I think once was enough. It is a very relatable film. Very strong performances, though.
So the next one on our list is 1917, which is a World War I film set in the trenches, where two young men are tasked to go find the front line of the British in order to stop a battle the next day, a fight between the Germans and the British. And it's this epic adventure of one man soldier to follow orders and do what he's supposed to do. I loved this film. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. There's a scene at night where this soldier is running through this bombed out town with a church on fire, and I mentioned earlier to Rob and Nate that it reminded me of art. Edward Abbey is one of my favorite artists, and I believe that this looked so much like his art, and it just was a beautifully shot film. I loved this. I think the story is one of those epics that we're missing so much nowadays. But the other thing that I think has been missing is this generation. These generational stories from World War I, we don't see those very often anymore. And I cannot recall in the last 20 years a good World War I film that really showed the veracity of the fighting and what trench warfare was like. And I think we forget how devastating that war was, especially for Europe. And I think this kind of helps showcase that. My favorite little sneak thing at the end was Benedict Cumberbatch, who looked very pirate-esque with his weird eye, and was also very mad, which was delightful. But I really enjoyed the film. I really, really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it as well. I saw this on the IMAX screen, which I really think is the way to see it. Of course, it is done to appear as though it was one continuous take. They do that through digital trickery. For the most part, that really works. I thought it was a great summation of the war. It doesn't have to do with a lot of specific things that happened in the war, but it hits a lot of the beats of the war, a lot of the larger themes. I really think it made it feel very real, and it was extremely tense throughout. I was exhausted at the end of this film because you're just on the edge, thinking anything can happen at any moment, and I thought it was very effective.
Yeah, I'm probably the biggest detractor on this film, but that being said, I liked the film. I certainly see why it was nominated for Best Picture. I think all of us agreed, a long time ago that this was a deadlock for cinematography, but to me it wasn't one of the best pictures of the year. The best parts of this movie to me were the parts in the trenches at the farmhouse, and him trying to, when he first gets into that town. The nature of the way they were shooting it lost me a little bit towards the end once he starts passing through the village, and gets to the river, things like that. The pacing changed it. The nature of the way that they shot this also, it's based partially on a true story, very partially. And for me, the lack of connection to real historical events, like, to me, the best war movies are tied to real war events, and this, to me, just didn't quite land as well. It's certainly, like I said, it's easy to see why it was nominated for Best Picture, deadlock for cinematography. Great film. I did enjoy it, but I did not have as high of an opinion of it as Nate and Melinda did, so...
Well, and I think, too, coming back to your moment where you said it didn't necessarily fall into real stories, or it's like based on speculation. We don't have a lot of historical stories for that time period anymore because everybody's gone, passed away. And so I'm kind of okay with the fact that it's not based around actual things. For me, that almost makes the story better in a lot of ways. I think we forget that those stories are gone, and I think this really showcased, again, a bigger storytelling idea that this particular soldier went on this big adventure because he had to in order to save others, and I think that we miss that sometimes in war movies, so it was nice. I liked it that way. So the next one was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is Quentin Tarantino's most recent film, which I saw many times in the theater. So do you want me to start?
Yeah, we've talked about it a bunch on the podcast, so yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
So I saw it 4 times in the theater. You had me at Charlie Manson. I enjoy me a little bit of cult moments in terms of stories, and so the first time I saw the film, when I saw Cielo Drive, I was like, wait a second, what is this? And then that
Did you not
me.
know that? Did you not know what this was?
I did not know that.
Going into it?
The first time I didn't know. I was like, wait, summer of '69, there's only one big thing that happened. And then I saw Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate in Cielo Drive, and I was like, oh, no! And then it was the Manson story, and I was in. You had me at Charlie Manson.
You only have Manson in one scene, though.
It's true. But
Yeah.
you have, like...
You have
the ranch and the crazies and all this, and the family. Like, you have the whole family, which was a big deal.
Which is really the bigger part of the Charlie Manson story to start with.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you get to meet Tex and the other 2 that are in the house anyway, which is kind of a big deal. I loved it. I think it's a great throwback film that showcases all of the kind of the greatest parts of the end of the 60s, early 70s. All the neon were some of my favorite parts. The cars were great. I think showcasing old Hollywood is always kind of fun. And it wasn't to the gross 70s part yet. It was still nice. And I think Tarantino did a good job. I also loved the dog. The dog was delightful.
Yes.
So...
Yeah, I love this film as well. Nate and I have talked about this before on the podcast. Strong film. Great job by Quentin Tarantino. This was, when we put together our list of 2019, this was number 1 on my list. It certainly would still be in my top 3. I haven't redone that, but now that I've seen the rest of the Best Picture nominees, I'd have to redo my list. But yeah, this is still one of the best films of the year, hands down, no challenge. Easily deserved to be nominated for Best Picture. I think that this is easily one of Quentin Tarantino's best films. For me, it's between, and I haven't seen all of Tarantino's films yet, but for me, thus far, of the ones that I've seen, if you were trying to pick his best picture to date, it would either be this or Pulp Fiction for me. So,
even though it's about Helter Skelter, it's his most positive film, which is a weird thing to say. It goes in directions that one might not immediately expect it to go. It pulled a trick that he's pulled before, and I fell for it the second time. I thoroughly love this film. It's still my favorite film of last year. I like movies where you feel like you can get up and stretch and walk around in them, and I certainly felt that way in this film. I felt like I got to visit 1960s Los Angeles, which was awesome. All of the little details were intact. Tarantino said that a major inspiration for this film was his childhood. He was 8 or so years old in 1969, and his father had a car, the same car that Brad Pitt has in this film, and he has all these memories of driving around Los Angeles with his father. The soundtrack I absolutely loved because it was period audio. You had music, you had some news, you had commercials. Tarantino was able to get a hold of about 8-9 hours of audio recordings of Los Angeles radio from 1968, 1969, and he used that as just this wonderful backdrop, this kind of through line through the entire film. I just absolutely adored Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah. I also, too, think Leonardo DiCaprio did a great job of being an aging actor, trying to figure out his place in Hollywood and moving outside Hollywood. But Brad Pitt, too. Like, what can the man not do? Like, he was just delightful.
Well, this
so
movie was
nice.
also, like, straight up his alley.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a chill dude, hanging out, fixing people's stuff, driving cars, having a good dog.
Yep.
That is all.
And our final movie on the list.
Parasite.
Which won? I was not expecting it to win until kind of mid-broadcast. I actually, that was my second guess. I'm like, it's either going to be 1917 or it's going to be Parasite.
See, and I thought it was going to be 1917 or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, though I had said from the moment I saw Parasite, I said I will not be disappointed if this movie wins Best Picture.
It's the first foreign language film to win the Best Picture Oscar, or very significant.
Yeah. But this film is, I mean, it was very well done. It's very well put together. It is a thriller, but not in the traditional sense of thrillers. Yeah. This film, I mean, it was a very strong film, very strong performance. You think the movie's going one direction, and then there's an unexpected twist. It goes a different direction. We're not going to spoil it here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thought it was a great film. I was surprised it won Best Picture. I saw it coming about, like Nate said, about halfway through the broadcast. Not disappointed by it winning. It's something different, something fun. Yeah.
Highly original. There is a twist about halfway through that something happens. You're like, what the crap? Because you think, as Rob said, you think you know where it's heading. They set it up to go in a very specific direction. That's where you think it's going. And then they throw in this loop midway through and it becomes a different film. Has some great tension to it. It's not like anything I've seen before. And that's always a big plus for me in films. I really, really enjoyed Parasite, and it's one I'm going to have to keep thinking about.
Yeah.
I agree. I thought it was a really original. Something we don't see very often are the films that kind of have class warfare in them that are more complex than just the class warfare. And I feel like this had that, which was great. I think it also kind of gives us an insight into South Korea and what living there is like. I also think that I don't want to give much away either. I really liked the family, and then I really didn't like the family, and then I really liked the family, and then I felt bad for, I went through the whole range of emotions with the family, which I thought was good and showcased kind of how inventive this film really was. And then when you hit the twist, you're like, wait, say what? And it kind of changes the dynamic of the film in a new and exciting way. And I loved it, and there was one of the things that we've chatted about off camera, sorry folks, off the microphone, was in the end, you want to have hope. You want to have hope in the end, but it does not look like there is much hope. And so it kind of leaves you with some questions that for me was like the best part of the film was not knowing. And so it was delightful.
It also
I really liked it.
loops you a little bit towards the end where you're like, really? This is the ending? And they're like, nope.
And then, yep,
that's
just
not the
kidding.
ending.
That's not it. So.
Yeah. I think all of us had this on a lock to win
Best foreign film.
International feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, they changed the
it's not foreign film anymore.
name of the category to
feature.
international feature from foreign language film, which I suppose opens it up to things made in the UK or Australia or other English-speaking countries.
I don't know. Yeah.
I assume it's just anything not made in the US.
Yeah, I think all of us had it as a lock for Best International Feature. I think some of us weren't necessarily surprised by it winning some of the other categories that it won. I don't think prior to the broadcast any of us really would have predicted it would win Best Picture. But I think all of us were pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any other comments on Parasite?
No, really?
the Best Picture for this year. Next category is Director, Best Director, which went to Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, which is when I think all of us knew for sure this was winning Best Picture. What were your guys' picks for Best Director?
That's who I had.
I was anticipating Sam Mendes for 1917 because I think that's a really solid job of directing. He, of course, did the Bond films. And he also did, if memory serves, some kind of artsy films too before that. So he's had his hand in a number of different types of filmmaking. It's a very distinctive movie. I thought he did a great job, but I too, I'm happy for Mr. Who that he won. It'll be interesting to see if this leads to him being able to make more major films that will be released in the United States or maybe even made in the United States.
I mean, you would expect that it would, but yeah. I also had Sam Mendes picks for Best Director. Pleasantly surprised, but yeah.
I picked Bong Joon-ho. He's really kind of shook up the awards season this year. Everyone was saying good things. I saw a bunch of stuff on Twitter about him and how just great he was, and I don't know. That was my pick. I just kind of threw, like, it was between him and Sam Mendes. I don't know. I also like Todd Phillips. And of course Tarantino, I thought maybe this would be his year, but I don't know. Just at the end of the day, I kind of assumed Parasite would get it.
So next category is Actor in a Leading Role. I'm curious, did anyone have anyone besides Joaquin Phoenix picked for this?
No, but if I were to give a second up, it would have to be Adam Driver.
I would have gone with Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes if I had to do a second.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to have another nomination. I think Adam Driver is all but assured to eventually win a Best Acting.
Probably, yeah. But Joaquin Phoenix was just a deadlock for this, for his performance in Joker. Great performance.
Did either one of you see the Antonio Banderas film?
No.
So I didn't see that, so I don't know how it relates to this. But yeah, I probably, out of the ones I've seen, except for the Banderas flick, I would have picked Driver as well. But at the same time, like, I could have also done DiCaprio.
This not to slight DiCaprio. He was very good in that film. In fact, the criticism I heard was he was too good an actor to be playing not that good of an actor.
Yeah, it
probably
was good. But I also loved The Two Popes. I could have easily been really happy with that, getting more awards. It didn't really get anything. So
yeah, the next category is Actress in a Leading Role. Who did you guys have picked for this?
I had Renee Zellweger.
I actually had Scarlett Johansson.
I had actually picked Saoirse Ronan. This was me homering for Little Women. I wanted to see that win some different categories, though I kind of expected Renee Zellweger might win for Judy.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure who else it would go to beyond that, but my pick was purely a homer pick, rooting for Little Women.
That was my original pick, and I crossed it out because I knew Zellweger was going to win.
It's nice to see her back.
We can't honor crossed out picks. Just kidding.
Well, I still... Okay, just so the audience at home knows, I won, by the way. These guys didn't
far
get
and
very...
away.
Far and away, I won.
Me and Rob got 9 right. You got 18?
16
I was actually,
out of 24, kids.
I was actually kind of picking how I would have voted.
See, and I took the realistic of like, this is how it's going to go. I can just see where it's going to go. So.
Yeah.
And I've been wrong before. Don't get me wrong. But this time, that's what I assumed.
Yep, but Renee Zellweger won that award for Judy.
What did you think of her speech, by the way?
Long.
It was long, and I felt like it was convoluted a little bit. It was mainly thanks.
Joaquin Phoenix's speech wasn't great, and neither was hers.
Joaquin Phoenix's speech is what people are going to remember this Oscars for, because he condemned the consumption of milk.
Yeah. Can't drink milk in your coffee. That is all.
The next category we have is actor in a supporting role. Really good choices this year. Most of these acting categories were really solid. My pick, and it could have been any of a couple, was Joe Pesci, largely because he was playing a character very different from what we're used to him playing. He's usually just very energetic, and he played a very self-contained person in The Irishman, and I just really, really wanted to see him finally win an Oscar. You know, he's in retirement. He came out of retirement specifically for this piece because of his relationship with Scorsese and others in the cast. And he wasn't even at the ceremony, which the moment I found that out, I'm like, okay, then I hope my second pick wins it. And that person did, which was Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for playing Cliff Booth.
Yep. I'd also pick Joe Pesci. Nate kind of persuaded me slightly on this one. I also thought his performance was great. It really was just a great role for Joe Pesci. It's hard to pick out a better performance that he's ever delivered on film. I would have, like Nate said, I would have loved to have seen him, give an acceptance speech. Not even in the slightest disappointed that Brad Pitt won this, though. His performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was great.
Probably the funnest performance to watch all year.
Oh, yeah. By far.
Yeah.
And that was my pick, was Brad Pitt. But at the same time, anybody in the category I would have been fine with. I did like Al Pacino, but as Jimmy Hoffa from The Irishman. But Joe Pesci was good too. I liked Hoffa better in the film, so I would have preferred Pacino over Pesci if I was going to pick a second.
Best Actress in a Supporting Role. Possibly the most solid one this year, I think. I mean, every single one of these, not that that's not the case with some of these other categories, but everyone here did a really excellent job. The ultimate winner, of course, was
Laura Dern.
Laura Dern, who was not my pick. I had picked Florence Pugh. Florence Pugh. I will learn that name eventually. And one of the reasons is because I just thought of the girls, the four girls, it went, and I didn't know the source material, but she had probably the strongest arc and went through the most change. I think she's a fine young actress. I had not realized up until the award was given that Laura Dern had not won an Oscar, and I'm glad that she did because she's consistently very high level and deserving of that award.
Well, and did she get nominated for... She got nominated for Marriage Story, and did she get nominated for Little Women? Okay.
No.
Yeah, so Laura Dern was my pick as well. I thought as the attorney in Marriage Story, she did such a great job of connecting and creating a safe space for Scarlett Johansson's character. And I really liked her. I thought she put a lot of things into perspective about the whole situation. Plus, she was also my secret hope that she would win because I really like her. But I also had Scarlett Johansson as Jojo Rabbit. That's who I picked originally and scratched it out because I'm a woman and I'm allowed to change my mind.
I'm questioning this Melinda's ballot. The 16 correct picks. That's her second scratch out, and we're not even done with the first column. I had picked Scarlett Johansson. I thought this was a great year for her. I thought Jojo Rabbit was a great performance. She was kind of my sentimental favorite pick for this one. Laura Dern is, as they've said, a very consistent, very high-level actress. It wasn't my favorite performance. I actually thought her performance in Little Women was a little bit stronger than in Marriage Story.
Yeah, I agree.
But not disappointed to see her win. Like Nate said, though, this was an incredibly strong category this year. This actress in a supporting role, any one of these.
I mean, Kathy Bates.
Yeah.
Was really good.
You guys saw Richard Jewell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an entire podcast.
She's really good
that.
in that.
Yeah, that was good. But yeah, Laura Dern is the ultimate winner there.
Original screenplay. I have to see that verified ballot here. So the ultimate winner of original screenplay went to Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won for Parasite. Mm-hmm. Really well written. I mean, it was really well put together story. It was really original. So I can't fault them awarding the award to that one. My pick was Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I second that. My if I were to pick a second winner or second loser, it would have been Knives Out. I really enjoyed that film too. This was a hard category, I think, original screenplay. All of these films are good. Knives Out, 1917, Marriage Story, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. But once you kind of see how things fell, like the cards fell, it's not surprising that Parasite won. But I, again, would have picked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as a second. So.
I actually did pick Parasite for this one. I was rooting for Parasite to win some awards, but not as many as it did. And I thought of these, it was probably the strongest. I liked Knives Out. That would probably be my second runner-up. Although, in hindsight, I would have kind of liked to have seen Quentin Tarantino win for something and wouldn't have minded seeing him win for this. But Parasite was my original pick for this. So
we'll move on to Best Adapted Screenplay. The winner was Taika, say his name.
Waititi.
Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit, which was an adaptation of a novel. I'd be really curious about that novel to see how much it bears resemblance to the finished film in terms of tone. I mean, it's creative. It's a strong screenplay. It was not my pick. I had instead chosen Greta Gerwig for her adaptation of Little Women that added her own very distinct take to a long cherished property. What about you guys?
I also picked Greta Gerwig. Again, I'm homering for Little Women because I love that film so much. But I thought this was honestly, where she did put her own twist on this. I thought this was possibly an easy one for her to pick up. Easy being, not really actually being easy. But I thought this would be a good one for her to possibly pick up. And so Greta Gerwig was my pick for this one.
I hoped for Greta Gerwig, but voted for Jojo Rabbit. So there you go. Taika is delightful, and I felt like that was a great film and really showcased a lot of things. And I wanted Greta to win, I did, but at the same time, I knew Jojo Rabbit was going to win. So
I actually had picked Jojo Rabbit, scratched it out, and went with Little Women.
Look at that. He admits to scratching things out.
But only when it was the wrong pick.
Whatever.
Our next category we've already discussed to the extent that I don't think any of us have seen any of the films in this category,
Yeah.
which is international feature. I picked Parasite. You guys did as well, right?
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on to
Animated feature.
And we're going to let Melinda host the next few.
Yes. So out of those, How to Train Your Dragon, the third film in that series, I Lost My Body, Klaus, and Missing Link. The winner was Toy Story 4, which was also in there as well. So I picked Toy Story 4.
That was my pick as well. One of my favorite films of last year. And really unexpectedly so, because it felt like that property, they'd said everything they had to say about it. Turns out they hadn't. Really surprised me. Really enjoyed the movie.
And added Forky, as you should.
Yep, and I also picked Toy Story 4. I was all but certain going into the show that it was either going to be Toy Story 4 or Klaus.
Yeah.
But I picked Toy Story 4.
Yep. Next one was documentary feature, which I hadn't seen any of these, so I guessed Honeyland, which seemed like the most interesting film out of that group, which is about a beehive keeper in, I think it's Pakistan?
No, it's like South Macedonia or something like that.
okay.
North Macedonia.
Anyway, so I picked Honeyland, but it was American Factory was the winner.
I had picked The Edge of Democracy. Like Melinda, I hadn't seen any of these going into the show.
I picked Edge of Democracy as well because I knew a little bit about it, and it was about political corruption in Brazil. Of course, the winner, as we mentioned, was American Factory, which was produced by the Obamas.
Which is
part of their
cool.
deal with Netflix.
I would love to see it. I would love to see all of these. I think they would be interesting.
I bet it's probably on Netflix, I think was what I heard.
So that would be an interesting thing to catch up on.
Next is original score. What did you guys have picked for this category?
Thomas Newman for 1917.
Andre Duplay for Little Women.
I had picked John Williams because he's reaching the end of his career. Yeah, but
we were all wrong.
We were all wrong, and the Oscar went to Hildur, I'm going to butcher this, Guðnadóttir for Joker.
It's okay. I'm pretty sure I said my guy wrong, too.
A young foreign woman, I believe it's the first woman to win a Best Score Oscar.
Yes.
Yeah, she had a good speech. And
she was delightful.
She was delightful.
She was quite delightful.
Yep. Next category is original song. I got this one right. I had picked I'm Gonna Love Me Again from Rocket Man, Elton John, and I forget who the other gentleman was. What did you guys have picked in this category?
I had Into the Unknown from Frozen, which felt like a safe choice at the time.
Yep, ditto.
So I'm the only one that got that one right. Huh?
There was two songs nominated about standing up. There was Stand Up in Harriet, and I'm Standing With You from Breakthrough, which is the kind of thing I notice.
Yeah. A lot of standing up was happening in the songs. Next was cinematography, and I think we all picked the same. But 1917 locked it in for me.
Yep.
And when I saw it, I was like, yeah, if it doesn't win Best Picture, it'll definitely win cinematography.
Yeah, I think this was hands down for cinematography from the get-go.
I mean, you really couldn't compete with Deakins. He's reportedly an excellent cook.
Yes, which is what a cinematographer does,
Mm-hmm.
says Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yep.
Next was costume design, which I picked right. I picked Little Women because, yes, the costumes in that movie were amazing. They did such a good job of doing the period pieces, and it wasn't just like the New England clothes, it was also the European clothes from Amy's trip, and I loved it. I thought it was delightful.
This is a category where they tend to like beautiful dresses. That tends to be the thing that wins. So I should have picked it, but I did not. I went with my favorite for the year, which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which the more I think about it, the less I should have gone with that, because you're just everyday wear from 50 years ago isn't a particular challenge.
Wait, Nate, you don't think Hawaiian shirts are a winner?
Hawaiian shirts are tough to get, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, in hindsight, again, I like Nate said, I should have picked Little Women, but I had picked the Joker. It seemed like the most original or creative to me going into it. But in hindsight, yeah, Little Women was the winner and should have been the pick going into it. So,
Which they showed Greta Gerwig's face during this, and she was so excited anytime
Yeah.
her film won. So I was, yes, sad that she did not win, but she was incredibly graceful through the rest of the
for
evening.
Jacqueline Duran.
Yeah.
Yep.
Editing. The winner in the editing category was Michael McCusker and Andrew Buckland in Ford versus Ferrari. It is a well-edited film.
Mm-hmm.
I wish the pacing were better, but it's a good-looking film. I don't have any particular complaint about their winning. My vote in that category, however, was Parasite, and you can put Parasite down for everything and you will eventually lose.
Yeah, that's true. I had the Joker. I kind of rolled the dice with this. I am glad Ford versus Ferrari won for a couple of categories because, again, I liked the film. But I could have I could have picked any of these films for editing. I thought they were all edited quite well.
I had Jojo Rabbit down. I thought that was very well edited. I thought that the way that they wove that together was very strong, and that was my pick going into this. So,
I think it would have been really funny if Thelma Shoemaker had won for The Irishman, because everybody felt it should have been cut down.
Right? That is
Yeah.
not wrong.
yeah.
Makeup and hairstyle, I think we were all on the same page here.
It's
a film.
Not.
You were not.
No.
I was off on this too.
Well, I was correct. I chose Bombshell. They made these people look exactly like the other people they were supposed to be, sometimes scarily so.
Yeah.
And even though you could obviously tell that that's John Lithgow under makeup, the makeup was really solid.
Yeah. In hindsight, I probably should have done a better job of predicting that, but I had gone with Joker.
Yeah, I went Joker too. But yeah, like Nate said, you could have. As I thought about it, when they showed the picture of, what's his face playing
John Lithgow.
Yeah, playing Roger Ailes, I was like, oh right. They did such a good like Bombshell was such a good film for makeup and like recreating.
Yeah,
specific
by far
people.
the greatest makeup achievement of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
Production design.
I got it right.
I got it right too. I think you probably
I got it
did.
wrong. I had picked 1917.
Oh no. I think with all the neon, they had to go with Once Upon a Time
With
in
all
Hollywood.
those little details, the magazines on the racks and the products in people's kitchens, and it just was the verisimilitude of late 1960s America was just so perfect. I thought the production design of this film was just superb.
See, and I thought like the set pieces for 1917 were very strong, from the trenches to the cottage to the bridge to the burned out village. I thought, I mean, it tails off towards the end of the movie for me, but I thought this was well enough done that I thought 1917 was a possibility. So
I think when you are trying to create a piece that is not that long past, and you can do such a good job as they did in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you have to come back to production design.
There
for
must
that.
have been a lot of going through Goodwills, or like, where did they
Right?
find some of this stuff?
Well, and you have to wonder if they also didn't go through some of the old costume
Yeah, I'm
wardrobes
sure
you
they
see.
did.
But at the same time, yeah, Goodwill, like they raided like your uncle's attic or whatever. But the reality is they did such a good job with how it was all set up. So I loved it. Next category is sound editing, and Ford versus Ferrari won, which is what I had.
I had 1917.
I also had 1917.
I I'm sorry. When you are doing a car film and you can get the sound right, you've done it well. And they did a really good job of setting things up in terms of the Ferrari sound, in terms of the Ford sound. I think it's really hard to have a really good racing film and make all the sound work. So I thought they did a really good job. That's why I picked it. 1917? Do you want to back up your choices?
Oh, 1917. 1917 sounds fantastic. And that was vindicated in the next category.
Oh, okay.
Sound mixing. I can't tell these two categories apart.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah, this one for me was a flyer. I liked Ad Astra, so I threw my pick to Ad Astra on this one.
See, and I picked Ford versus Ferrari again, and it lost, so.
And to be clear, it went to 1917 in this category.
Yep.
So.
Next one was visual effects, which I picked 1917.
As did I.
I actually went with Star Wars, just trying to throw something the way of Star Wars.
Oh, that's nice of you. Star Wars does not need your votes. Star Wars has enough money and
what a picked upon little franchise.
Well, yeah.
I think you're good.
Yeah, but that was my pick with Star Wars.
The next two we did see. We saw the animated short and the live action short.
Which I did not.
We did not see the documentary short, but we at least saw the animated short and the live action short. Me and Rob did. And I picked Hair Love for animated short and The Neighbor's Window for the live action short, and both of those won. Hair Love is such a groundbreaking film in terms of there's been a big movement for people to love their hair the way it is as opposed to changing it. And so Hair Love was a huge groundbreaking film and got a lot of movement on Kickstarter. So
I picked Hair Love, though if I was to tell you what my favorite was Kit Bull, but I didn't think there was any way Kit Bull was going to win, and so I went with Hair Love because it seemed like the obvious choice. On the live action shorts, I also had picked The Neighbor's Window. I loved that film. I thought it was great. If I were to give a second pick for a live action short, it would have been to Nefta Football Club.
Oh, which was it was a good film.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to watch that short, you should. It's only like 10 minutes. It's delightful.
So I picked Hair Love as well, largely because I'd just been seeing it promoted a lot, and
Yeah.
it seemed like it would probably win. I had no point of reference on the live action shorts, so I picked one to pick one. I picked Brotherhood.
Which the Brotherhood was good too. Brotherhood's all about a son in a family that he goes off to fight for ISIS. And he ends up running away from the front and marrying this really nice girl. And he comes home and he's got a bride and his family's not sure what to do. And it's really, really good. It's excellent in terms of dealing with the after effects of ISIS in the Middle East and how do people come to terms with having family members come home from being in a terrorist organization. How do you handle that? Do you turn them in? Do you not turn them in? How do you handle it? And I thought it was very well done. So that's not a bad pick, actually. So good job.
And the final category is documentary short. Did you guys get this one right?
You did.
I did too. I mean, it seemed like an obvious choice. Not having seen any of them, learning to skateboard in a war zone seemed like, if you're a girl, seemed like a obvious choice.
Yeah. I agree.
I picked in absence. Again, I had no point of reference. I just picked one to pick one.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of the show in general this year?
Not great presentation. They really, really need to get back to a host. I think if they don't do a host next year...
They might as well just award them and not televise it.
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far, but it'll deflate me.
Yeah.
I think the thing that really... A host gives something distinct to each ceremony.
Yeah.
And not having a host, they run together.
Well, and I think there wasn't a host, which doesn't really, again, move the story through, right? Like, the biggest part of of Oscar night is having a narrative through the course of the evening. It kind of sews everything together.
They should have just let Steve Martin and Chris Rock host together. That would have been
right?
great. They were fine in their little introductory segment.
Julia Lewis, Louis Dreyfus, and Will Ferrell did a good job. I think
Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph.
Yeah, they did great.
I would not like to see them host the Oscars.
No.
They're entertaining in short segments, but I would not like to have seen them host the Oscars. Like you said, Will Ferrell, Julia Louis Dreyfus. I think either one of those could do it by themselves. They were fun together. Chris Rock and Steve Martin, that was fun. They could easily co-host it together.
They got the contemporary jokes in there that you needed.
What about, didn't Tina Fey and Amy Poehler do the Golden Globes?
Yeah.
They haven't done the Oscars.
They have not.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd love to see them do the Oscars, but there would be a lot of people who would.
Okay, no, don't get me wrong. I do love
Tina Fey's
Seth
great.
MacFarlane on occasion. I did not like him as a host of the
No,
Oscars.
and he can't do it again.
So, no. So that definitely is out. But I wouldn't mind seeing Tina Fey and or Amy Poehler do it.
I'd like to see Tina Fey. I'm kind of on Amy Poehler.
I thought Jimmy Kimmel was fine.
And Jimmy Kimmel was great. Again, I would still love to see Jimmy Fallon do it. I know that it's a competing network, but I think that they could figure that crap out.
Yeah, they can figure it out. It's just there's not much incentive for them to. But yeah, I thought the early speeches were good. The latter speeches were not as good until you got back to Best Director. Like, Best Supporting Actor and Actress both were kind of just odd and way too long. But everyone else, and especially early on, I thought the speeches were good. Bong Joon-ho, he's great.
I want somebody to keep track of how much he drinks tonight. I want to know.
I'm a little worried about him. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Well, he's with people he trusts. He'll be somewhere safe in the morning.
That's good.
Be safe in the basement.
Yeah.
I hope not. My other favorite, of course, was Brad Pitt's speech about how he got 45 seconds more than John Bolton. And then the Joaquin Phoenix speech was delightfully awkward, which is Joaquin Phoenix. He's delightfully awkward. That's part of his character.
All over Fox News tomorrow.
Of course. I was hoping for something better speech-wise. I feel like there are usually good speeches and bad speeches.
Well,
and we didn't really get a mix of that this year.
It's funny that the last two, Joaquin Phoenix and Renee Zellweger, they went way over.
Yeah.
And then when you had, a small town on stage for Parasite, that they cut them off. And then the audience started clapping to put the lights back on, and you knew they were gonna.
They're gonna do
There's
it.
no way they're not gonna.
They're gonna cave.
Yeah, it was just weird decision to do it then when you'd already run that far over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on the Oscars this year?
No, I enjoyed the Oscars. Again, the presentation, the structure of the ceremony was subpar, but a lot of the categories were really strong this year.
In Memoriam was good.
Memoriam was good.
It was sad. I didn't realize how many people had passed away until you start looking at it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And again, I was hoping Jane Fonda would say something political.
Jane Fonda said nothing political.
Was she supposed to be saying something with the coat? That's what I want to know. Dear Jane Fonda, if you were trying to say something with the coat, will you let us know? That is all.
Well, if there's nothing else to add, I'm Rob.
I'm Nate.
I'm Melinda.
And this has been Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. Hope you enjoyed.
The Easter eggs.
Yeah.
The little things to put after the regular recording. Because we've done this a few times and
where
said
we something
turn it
hilarious
on
afterwards.
and then turning it off and then we're just like, dang, we wish we'd been running before.
So we have this unwritten rule now. We just let the mic run for a couple minutes after we finish recording.
5-ish minutes maybe.
Sometimes it turns into nothing, which is fine. It's easy to delete. So
Thanks for letting me be your first guest host.
Yeah, that was fun.
Even though I have only listened to 20 minutes of your podcast.
You weren't a guest host. You were just a guest.
You were a guest.
Oh, I'm sorry. A guest. But you guys made me say stuff. Like,
yeah, what do you expect a guest to do?
No. A guest doesn't have to, announce...
This is the nature of our podcast, which you would have known if you'd listened to the podcast.
I have listened to some of the podcast.
We should bring on guests in the future that we just have them sit in the background while we record.
Yeah. And Melinda's here again, eating tacos.
The next time Melinda appears on the podcast, she will not speak.
Well, this time she brought nachos. I feel like I probably could just sit in the back and eat.
It'll explain the crunch in the background.
Brad Pitt during Ocean's 11. All he does the whole time is eat food. I could do that.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Well, and I like that Brie Larson, after the female composer got got her award, she's like, wow, that was so awesome.
I love Brie Larson.
As you should.
I
She's
think
delightful.
She was great in Room. The book Room is great. Nate, you really gotta
I
catch
need
up
to
on
see
that
it.
one.
I've been
She
meaning
was
to.
I'll
also
lend it to
good. Didn't you see Just Cause?
No, he
Or-
hasn't.
No, I'm
Oh,
not.
you should see that. It's amazing. She's really good in that. She's really good in, well, she's Captain Marvel.
She's good in,
Um,
which I didn't love. She's good in The Glass Castle.
We might be fighting a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
I love Captain Marvel.
A lot of women do. My sister really does. I think it makes sense. It would mean a lot to have a female superhero, which technically you have before because
But it's
Wonder
not-
Woman came out before, but
It's bigger than a female superhero because she was a pilot first before she became a superhero.
I think that the
so
first
that shifts the gender norms.
kind of a balance. I think the first Captain Marvel was not as strong as it could have been. They're going to do more with her in that franchise.
Are they?
And I'm
maybe give her a
Oh yeah,
character.
yeah.
I didn't realize they were still doing more. I thought they were done with
Oh
her.
no. There's more Captain Marvel.
They're in
coming.
phase 5 or whatever of the MCU.
I saw the trailer for Morbius, the new Jared Leto one, where he's like a vampire or something weird. So at first I thought he was the new Batman because he goes into a cave and he's surrounded by bats, and I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, I don't understand. And he's like sick and deformed, and then he comes out and he looks super good. And I was like, wait, first, you don't go into a cave and get tan. I don't know how that happens. And second, why bats? And then it turns out he's a vampire. But he's a superhero vampire.
Well, I think he's a bad guy. I think he's a Spider-Man bad guy.
What does this have to do with
Morbius?
what's her name?
No. So this is like the next phase of Marvel. They're moving into it.
So this is Sony's thing. So they've got this kind of share agreement about Spider-Man, but apparently some of the images from this new movie have what appears to be Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the Iron Man Spider-Man suit, which makes it look like maybe this is intended to be part of an MCU universe, but it had not been set up previously to be. It seemed like it was its own separate thing. So I don't know all what's going on there and how official or semi-official its association with the larger MCU is.
Have you seen... Okay, so this is shifting away. Sorry, Rob.
What is any of this? We need to finish talking about Brie Larson. This is why I can't include some of this in the podcast as outtakes because we never finish a thought.
No,
but we're letting it go.
Letting it go?
Yeah, but then it ends up just getting deleted. It can never go into the podcast because it's never
What
finished.
does this have to do with Brie Larson? Brie Larson is delightful. She's also doing a Fosse film. Did you hear about this?
She's doing a Fosse film?
Yeah, like about dancing. Like she's been training for a film about
Bob Fosse?
Bob Fosse.
Well, they just had
dancing.
a series about Bob Fosse on FX that had Sam Rockwell in it as Bob Fosse and Michelle Williams as Mrs. Fosse. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
I didn't hear
it won
about
all
that
sorts
either.
of awards.
Yeah, no, apparently she's doing, and maybe it's not a Fosse film, but she's doing a dance film because I read an article in, I want to say Entertainment Weekly, and she was talking about how she'd been doing some dance training.
I'm looking forward to the subsequent Captain Marvel films, and I hope they use her talent better and that she turns in better performances as Captain Marvel. Because she's clearly a very talented actress, that performance was
it's subpar.
It required almost nothing from her. I mean, when we talked about it on the podcast, I told Nate, great, she won an Oscar. Now she's cashing a paycheck. Good for her.
Yeah. Did you watch The Unicorn Store? Her movie on Netflix that she wrote.
No.
Did you watch it?
No, I heard about it.
It was weird, but it was really, really good. Sorry.
That's fine. This is outtakes.
Samuel L. Jackson is in it as well. So clearly they had already done Marvel at that point, and she was like, hey, so I have this fun little script that I wrote.
This is my thing about Captain Marvel. It ain't Captain Marvel. It's the Nick Fury movie. Nick Fury to me is the star of that movie. He has more of an arc than she does.
That's true.
He's just more interesting.
I'll include
than
this
she
just so
is.
people can then hate on Nate.
And there's been this huge pushback against Brie Larson as Captain Marvel that has these misogynistic overtones, undertones, and I'm not part of that. I just didn't think it was a great performance.
I'm just teasing
Nate.
Nate knows I'm just teasing him.
I think I liked it. I know we already have Wonder Woman and Gal Gadot, and I'm excited for 1984.
Oh, I'm really excited for 84.
I think it looks delightful. I also think that Kristen Wiig in that film is
She's a cheetah.
Yeah, she's a cheetah.
Mm-hmm.
I have the reboot of that comic book, by the way. I should give it to you. You should read it. But I'm just excited. I think that'll be great. But I think Brie Larson does what she can with Captain Marvel. The Captain Marvel arc in the comic books is convoluted because at one point it's a man, and then it's a woman, and then it's a man, and then it's a woman.
Well, it was also...
Well, she can shapeshift.
She's like the Doctor.
That's not how that works.
She changes her... Yeah. Anyway.
No, it's like a power thing. Like different people
is.
are Captain Marvel at different times.
Okay.
Depending on how things
Captain
fit.
Marvel was actually originally the name of a DC character, and then they let that property lapse, and then Marvel Comics
Marvel
quite
took it
logically picked it up. It's like, we can do something with this.
Yeah.
And eventually DC did bring back their Captain Marvel character, but they had to rename him. They renamed him Shazam.
Yep.
Really?
Shazam.
Mm-hmm.
That's where
was unaware of
Shazam.
that.
Yeah, that's where Shazam comes from.
Huh. That's interesting.
Also, there was some talk at one point that the Fantastic Four, the Flexi guy, like he was originally supposed to be Captain Marvel and then wasn't. I don't know, but
Are they ever going to do anything again? I mean, they've had this horrible track record with Fantastic Four.
No, Fantastic
rebooted
Four's been
that.
beat to...
Hey,
to
we
bloody
say
pulp.
that, and then
It'll show up as a series, I think, because if you've struck out 3 times.
If you tried to do Fantastic Four again today, it's going to turn into Hancock.
What? Nah. That's the Immortals. You're talking about the Immortals, which is a different part of the
No,
MCU.
I'm talking like in terms of reception, it's going to land about as well as Hancock did.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. My favorite thing that I've seen is, have you seen that tweet that's going around about how Disney is slowly taking over the world?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end,
You're
very
talking
last...
to people who aren't big on Twitter.
Oh, well, it went around as a meme, and it's like Disney takes over Fox, and then Disney takes over this, and right, and it goes through all the years, and it's like 2040. Fans are excited because they've decided to reboot the X-Men. And it's like, oh yeah, that's that one time. So that's what I think. Like, anytime they do these reboots, I'm like, it's too soon, it's too soon, it's too soon. It's not going to do anything. And then they redo it anyway, and then it turns out it's better than it was before.
There was a throwaway line on an episode of Babylon 5, which of course is set in the 23rd century, where another character says to him, or he says something about, and I don't need a vacation, I don't need a trip to Disney Planet.
Disney Planet.
And J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of the show, was asked about it, and he said, oh, you just give them enough time, they'll try to buy a planet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The moon. They could take over the moon. It could be, instead of Epcot Center, it could be Epcot.
Well, the moon does become a tourist attraction, a amusement park on the show Futurama.
On what?
Futurama.
If they take over the
Futurama,
moon, they're
yeah.
just going to name it Endor.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that they would take over a different planet. Terra Nova the crap out of it. Remember that show on Fox? It was terrible.
Yeah.
Terra Nova.
It was on for
2 seasons?
2 seasons, longer than one would think.
One would think, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they'll do. They'll Terra Nova a planet and then make it into Disney Planet.
Oh, I think we've rambled on long enough.
Yeah.